Yeah, well, one more thing we should mention real quick before we wrap up on microwaves.
Microwaves.
Oh, no. Microwaves.
We live in the
microwaves
capitalist dystopia with microwages.
Oh, man. Wow. All right.
Don't give him any ideas.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with Randall Nolery.
Hello.
And John Hines.
Hey there.
And we are back, as always, to talk about some video games. Going as a trifecta today, and we'll just get right into it. And, John, I did want to ask you real quick before we get into it. You mentioned in the Discord that you had been firing up Downwell recently.
Oh, boy.
And you after we talked about, I think DJ kind of brought it back up on the podcast a few weeks back. And I know we've talked about it quite a few times, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts because I think this is just kind of your first time kind of diving in a little bit more deeply into it.
Yes, I wouldn't say it's my first time diving into it. I think I would say it's the first time that I've ever been good at it.
Heck yeah.
I've played it. I've tried playing it multiple times over the years because I got it. Yeah, it's one of the strongest recommendations I've ever gotten on a game from you, and I've always wanted to try it, but I've just never been good at it.
It's a hard game.
I've always been so bad at it. But I played it long enough that I unlocked a style called boulder style, which gives you, I think, 2 extra hit points. Oh. And the compromise is that it takes away, once you clear a level, I think you typically get 3 power-ups to choose from, and you get to choose one of those 3. But with a boulder style, it limits you to 2. And for someone who is rarely clearing a level, that wasn't that big of a handicap. And all the power-ups do help you. So it's right. I'm not really tailoring a play style to me, but it was the first way that I was able to clear the first world or first level, however those are broken up. And it's fun. It's a really good game.
It is.
Yeah. It's so great. It's so great. And I'm glad. The reason I wanted to mention it or talk about it a little more is because, I played a lot of boulder mode, not necessarily with the big combos I've gotten, but to practice getting the combos or even just to practice getting a little deeper into the game because it's not like I was getting 100 plus combos the first time I played. Right. It took me a lot of practice to get to the point where I'm able to chain these combos together. And there's even other modes later, like a floaty. Have you unlocked that one, John?
That's one of the earlier ones. And I did like that because, it does make it a little bit easier to get combos. But yeah,
I think you jump a tiny bit higher and you definitely bounce higher off of enemies.
Oh, yeah. The hang time's a little bit more.
But you kind of fall slower as well. So it's I got so used to the rhythm of the game at normal gravity or whatever that floaty in my head, I was I'm going to be able to get some massive combos. But it's almost maybe I just don't even have the patience for it. But right. I'm just I just want to keep going boom, 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 boom. So I don't know. I'm just so glad that you dug into it and it just every time anyone even mentions Downwell, I'm I gotta play some more.
So fun.
I gotta go back. So I'm glad you've been enjoying it.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and the reason I kind of wanted to bring that up, too, is because it just I don't know, it's just a cheesy little connection between another game that I checked out recently was a game called Overflow, and it's a game that was made for a game jam. It's got a really Baba Is You kind of style, it's a top-down puzzle game. Had 16 levels, and it has a well featured in the game that, on every level, you have a limited number of moves. Once you have to control your character and move to one of the tiles next to the well to refill your bucket, and then you have to move around and water all the flowers around the level. But then there's certain parts of the level that have, these clearly, red kind of... They're not grown yet, but they're weeds on the ground that once you travel over that tile, the weed will grow and then you can't walk over that tile. It's essentially a wall that you can't walk through. So it was just kind of like Baba's You. We've obviously talked about on the podcast, I think a couple times at least, and like it's one that I really really love. But like I got so far, or I got to a point that I did not get very far. I got to a point in that game where it was like it's just like I really got to rack my brain. Where this was just such a nice, like it probably took me about 30 minutes to play through, but it did have me like. They were good, like just a solid progression of puzzles. It was just like such a nice game and beyond polished for a game jam game. Like if this was just like, you know, a few worlds extended and a couple new songs, like 'cause it's just one song looping over. But man, this was like a really, really polished game. And it's just like, I really recommend checking this one out. I actually found it when I was looking for the game that you and I are about to talk about right now, John. I was looking for this game Surge that you recommended, and this was just on the front page. Overflow was on the front page of Itch.io. When I logged on, I was like, oh, this looks cool. It looks kind of like Baba's You.
Nice.
But you had mentioned this game called Surge, which was another game jam entry from a developer called Reeds. Mm-hmm. And we checked that out, or I checked it out after you did. But why don't you take the lead on this one, John, since you discovered it?
Yeah, so Surge is a game. It was made for a game jam where the theme was power, and it's kind of a Minit-like, which is a kind of subgenre that's emerging that I am really enjoying.
Yeah,
where you have a set amount of time before, in this game, like you are in the fiction of the game playing a game on a computer during a thunderstorm, so the power is continuously going out, and that resets your progress, so you're always going back to the first like starting point every single time that, you know, lightning strikes and the power goes out.
What a cool concept.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
And like, so unlike Minute, which has a like 60-second counter that you are constantly seeing, this game kind of just has a background timer that's going that you aren't really aware of, or like you don't see like on the screen. So you're just kind of like, all right, like it always happens at the same time, but you're feeling out, you're trying to advance a little bit further in the game. And like every time the way, like it's scripted really well so that you basically have like, not like the exact amount of time to get to the next point or to get to the next like story beat that you can figure out where to go, but like it gives you enough that like you always, I don't know, it's not oppressive.
Yeah, it's like once you get to a certain point, you know, like you can, like the next time you'll be able to poke and prod a little further. Even if you don't necessarily figure out what you need to do, you'll be able to try something new.
Right.
So you don't feel like you're just
nice.
like hitting your head against a wall. And it's a much shorter game than Minute.
That's also nice.
You know, which I think Minute, I didn't finish it, but I know it's at least multiple hours. Where this game, at least for me, took maybe 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Ish.
Same. And like we're gonna talk about another game that like I think has the same strength of like Surge, where it is like such a self-contained game where like it is very goal-oriented and it's like kind of scene-oriented, where like you get to a thing, you solve a puzzle, and you move on to the next. Whereas like Minute is a much more open world, kind of like a Zelda in that respect, where like there are so many points in Minute where I just wasn't exactly sure where the next thing was that I was supposed to do. So I was spending a lot of like deaths in that game, like just exploring, trying to like get to the next area and like finding a new like respawn point and like doing that over and over again until I like finally found what the next thing was to do. And like that was fun in that like, you know, there's a broad world full of like characters and things to do, and I think that that's really cool. But like,
it's super charming, yeah.
But having like a focused, like very puzzle driven game like Surge, or the other game which is Steps, which is very clearly a like Minute-like. Like I think.
Oh yeah, it's like in every capacity, and I guess Surge is as well. And I guess just real quick before we move on to that, we should I just want to mention the aesthetic of Surge, where it's like you are like actually like looking at this like low poly rendered version of like an old school like 90s PC that like there's a thunderstorm going on, and that's why the power is going out, and you're actually like I played the game with headphones on, and like it's and which I think it recommends when you boot the game up, or at least on like the game's page, and it's like, yeah, there's just all this atmosphere, but that is why the power keeps going out. So it just kind of has this like really great, it's just this concept that's taken to the next level. And like, I don't know, I just really like the presentation of that game. Yeah, I just didn't want to like not mention that aspect of it, because that's definitely at least what caught my eye when you mentioned it. I was like, oh yeah, this looks sweet. I'll check this out for sure. But yeah, Steps is a game that I think I might have checked out before you did, John. I don't know for sure, but I was just poking around on the PICO-8, and this one is from Amidos. And it's just like you were saying, it's another Minit-style top-down puzzle adventure, although instead of time, it's based on the number of steps you're taking, hence the name Steps. And you're limited, I think, to 10 steps. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And you're moving around, and like there's basically different checkpoints throughout the small island that you're on, and you move around and just have to like navigate. You know, there's kind of single screen. It's like a top-down adventure game again, where it's like you can't see much. You know what it's like? Maybe it's tile-based, so it's maybe 8x8 max. I mean, it's a really tight, zoomed-in view. So like you are kind of like, you don't know, like you're going to take 2 or 3 steps on this screen, and like I don't know what's on the next screen, so I don't know what's next.
And sometimes it's an immediate death, but it's like such a quick respawn. Then there's only 10 steps that you're like, okay, I know exactly like that's going to be instant death, so I don't go on that like tile. And like it is just feeling out, but at such a much like quicker pace than Minit. Which is still a pretty fast-paced game of like 60
it's
seconds.
Literally a minute, 60 seconds. But like again, like you mentioned, like having so many options, like with both of these games, you feel like, oh, I have like maybe 2 or 3 things that I can try. So if this doesn't work next time, I'm going to try this. Where Minit is like, am I even going the right way right now? Like I'm trying 10 different things, and I might not even be on the right path. And it does feel like it has kind of a scripted path, at least from what I've played of Minit. It does feel like you do have to do things in sort of a certain order. So you do, at least I got stuck at a certain point where these, like, I don't even think there's a risk. Like this one took me even less time. I think 10 minutes or so max. And it's like,
it was great. Like that is like the perfect, like both Surge and Steps are just like really distilled puzzle games that are like the like best length that they could possibly be. And that like sometimes it's just a good solid 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's all you need. And yeah, I just love like it's a totally non-violent experience. I guess both. I guess Surge has like whatever, you technically kill enemies or whatever, or defeat enemies. But yeah, Steps is like totally non-violent. You just get a few different like abilities and items throughout the game, and you know they just kind of throw different. I guess they are mechanics, but they just throw kind of new concepts at you throughout the game. You know, the lights are out, or you get a different type of boots that let you travel differently. So it's a really cool little game. And again, all these PICO-8 games, if we ever mention anything from PICO-8, which we have a couple more to talk about later, but you can play them right in your browser. I don't think that's true for 100% of them, but we'll definitely have links in the podcast description to where you can check some of these out. So definitely do. But why don't we get into some more kind of neo-retro stuff, Randall, with what you've been playing. And I also checked this game out as well, but why don't you take the lead on this one?
Yeah, so I want to talk about Micro Mages.
Yes.
I will just stay right out the gate. I've had a great time with Micro Mages. And it's an NES game, so it's a modern game. They just released it in 2019, but I played it all the way through on an NES cartridge that I can physically hold, and I'm just such a big sucker for that in the first place. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
But it's by Morphcat Games, who also developed Bobble, that we talked about a few episodes back and raved about that game too, and how good that game felt. You know, so good. And again, another kind of pretty short, contained experience, and that's a great thing, right? You know, that Bobble is like 30 minutes. This game will take you a little bit longer than that. There's 8 worlds and 26 levels between the normal and hard mode. But yeah, I had a blast playing through this, and I did beat it just because, you know, I was having such a good time, and the control, just like in Bobble, felt so perfect to me. It was just like spot on, just like silky controls. Like every action I took, I meant to take. If I died, it's my fault. Like you can't necessarily say that about every retro game, even, I would say. So
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But the mobility is really good too. Like you have your jump button, and you can shoot spells or hold the charge, which I didn't realize the first time I played and beat this game that you could even hold the charge.
Which same here. The times that I played, I haven't even done the charge shot yet in my time playing the game. But yeah, I was kind of, when you mentioned that before, I was like, oh man, how did I not notice that? How did I not try that?
I know. And I didn't, because I've got one of those new 8-bit DOE wireless NES controllers that have built-in turbo buttons. So I had like the turbo shot, which is very, very useful in this game. So I just kind of,
because it is a mash. It is a mash heavy, like you got to hit the button every time to fire. It's like a run and gun platformer.
It is,
although it is more like vertical. You're scrolling more vertically. I mean, you're running side to side, but like you're moving up, kind of Kid Icarus style.
Yes.
Not that every level in Kid Icarus that way, but
yes. Along those lines, my pitch for this game is: do you wish Ice Climber was a fun game? And Micro Mages is the game that you're looking for. Then,
yeah. And it has co-op, not to mention up to 4-player co-op, correct?
Which
if you got the multi-tap.
Yeah, and that's a pretty unique thing. And in reading some of the developer log stuff and the little video they put out and how they developed this game, they talked about that as a key point of why they made this game, is because there aren't that many 4-player capable NES games. It's not an easy thing to do, just based on the NES's limitations on the number of sprites on a given line that it can draw, essentially.
Yeah.
But they managed to do it, and I would actually really recommend folks watch that YouTube video where how we fit a game, NES game, into 40 kilobytes. Yeah. So this game is 40 kilobytes, which is just obscene to me that they were able to fit it in 40 kilobytes. It's just nuts.
Yeah, I'll try to link to that in the episode description as well.
Yeah,
that video.
Like, this is a colorful game that plays wonderful and has a great soundtrack, and for them to just have shrunk it down to fit into 40 kilobytes, not megabytes, not gigabytes, kilobytes.
40 gigabyte NES cartridge.
I'd love to see that. But yeah, that's to give a frame of reference. That's basically the size of what the original NES games, like the black box games, that came out when the system launched in North America, were essentially mostly 40 kilobyte games. Like Super Mario Brothers is a 40 kilobyte game, to my knowledge. Gotcha. So definitely more of like a simpler starting point and a pretty big constraint to put on themselves to develop, and they just knocked that out of the park. Like, to the point where there's a lot of enemy variety. The enemies have pretty interesting AI, especially when you get into the harder levels. Like, they recognize when you are there. They'll essentially, like, quote unquote, see you and start behaving differently and throw projectiles at you. There's a lot of enemies with projectiles, which that's where a lot of the platforming comes into play, and a lot of the difficulty, honestly, in the way that they place those enemies.
100%. And they are like built levels, right? It's not like procedurally generated. It's truly like a built, because it kind of looks almost like it could be a procedurally generated thing. And I think my brain thinks that almost just because it has that really like zoomed out perspective, like Spelunky, like original classic Spelunky style. Or there's a bunch of games that have that style, obviously, but that's like what my brain thinks of.
Yeah. And they talk about in that video that they did that on purpose to have smaller sprites so that the NES could draw them all at the same time if you were playing 4-player and still had enemies on the same line, and allows for that verticality to take place where they can scroll the screen, but they won't have to quite as quickly if it's more zoomed out, right? So all that creates a very smooth experience. The other thing that I thought was cool is the kind of checkpoint flag system. That, like, after each chunk of level, which is it's not easy to complete a chunk of level even, let alone a whole level, there'll be a checkpoint flag that can, once you die, you can thankfully graciously start from that point. But if you're going for a high score or you want more lives and you already have this level down pat, you could destroy the flag instead.
Yes.
For points. I didn't realize that. Just by
Knight.
Shooting it, or
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Just like Shovel Knight. Yes.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yes. So as I started playing this game over and over and over again, because I was addicted to it, if I needed to play the first levels again, I'm like, screw it. I'm gonna destroy these checkpoint flags. So my point total builds up higher, and I'm getting those 1-up hearts faster in the game, and I've got now more lives to work with as I get into the more difficult levels.
Do those 1-ups spawn at like a point threshold?
They do. Yes.
Oh, man. Okay. So, because what I was going to say, like, my only real complaint about this game was just going from Bobble to Micro Mages. It was like Bobble was just more of like a unique concept, I guess. It was just more of like it's a little more eye catching. Like Micro Mages is more of like it is just like a straight up arcade game, but I love straight up arcade games. And like the fact that you're at, like, what you're talking about is just being like, oh, there's that depth I was looking for.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Going for those high scores, going for those. Yeah. Cause I would say like my only gripe is like there are some cool power ups or cool power up. You can get this seagull, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly. At first, I thought it was like a little owl, but you can kind of like hover, like hold the jump button down and hover over like gaps for a limited amount of time. So like if it's just like in my head, like if it's like, oh, if this were a roguelike and had 7 different power ups or and a bunch of different I'd be like I could play this game endlessly. So like, but between that and then going from Bobble to this, like their later game or their more recent game to their previous game, it was kind of like, just a little, I don't even want to say disappointed, because I did have a lot of fun. I didn't get to the hard mode, but I played just a couple runs. But my first run, I actually got almost all the way to the end of normal mode. I got to World 4-2, I think, which is 4-3 or like 4-3 plus the boss or whatever is the final level of normal mode. So yeah, I got pretty far. And then I do like that there are those like we mentioned the checkpoints, but I like that like when you die, you don't start over from the level you're on. You got to go back to the world. So it's not like the start of the world. So it's not like full retro where you got to start the game over, but it's like got a little bit of that retro, like, I got to go back through this again. But like in the best way, it's not too frustrating. Just like Cyber Shadow, like we talked about pretty recently too. It's like the checkpoints are like I don't know. It's just like got a nice level of frustration, an enjoyable amount of frustration.
It does. And then, like I said, it never feels bad when you die. It's like, oh, I messed that up. Like I wasn't paying enough attention or anything else. And, I never felt super frustrated. I always felt like, all right, let me play again. Like it was like, just like instantaneous, like, let me try again. And that's how I was able to beat it. The other thing I'll say too, like Bobble, there are quite a bit of little secrets and stuff that are hiding in here. And in Micro Mages, that kind of takes the form of false walls. There's a lot of false walls that you can kind of jump into, especially with that charge up little extra boost you get from your jump, which again, like most of those false walls and secrets I didn't access the first time around, even though you can wall jump. A lot of them are kind of off the wall a little bit, that you can't quite jump with a regular jump. You would need that extra boost and maybe even the seagull ability sometimes too to get to, but they're all over the place and can give you extra treasure out of those treasure boxes and crates that you can break for more points, or the the power-ups, the other power-up being a fairy that kind of gives you an extra hit point or whatever. But it's like I love this game. I was psyched that, like, I kind of bought this on a whim, just based on Morphcat games and playing Bobble. I'm like, okay, I need to play this Micro Mages. Let me just buy the cartridge. And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, one more thing before we wrap up Micro Mages, I do want to mention, I know we've mentioned like a few times that we've been playing on NES, or at least Randall's been playing on that Analogue Nt Mini.
Yes, sir.
But this is also available on PC, and it was also available in the Itch.io bundle for Racial Justice and Equality, which is how I was playing it. But just worth mentioning that like it isn't, you don't need to have an NES or some kind of retro setup with a multi-tap. You can play this 4 players on your actual, I was playing it on Itch.io. I don't know if it's on Steam and other platforms, but yeah, just worth mentioning. You don't have to be a retro aficionado to have access to this one.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of a high bar to climb these days, just to even get that running on a modern TV. So yeah, I'd recommend the PC route. It's still worth playing.
Yeah, and it worked perfectly for me. So
yeah, that's awesome.
All right, well, to get back to a little more PICO-8 stuff, we talked about steps earlier, John, and we had a couple more PICO-8 games that we wanted to mention tonight. And again, these are all playable right in your browser, although we've been playing them on the PICO-8 platform. At least that's how I was playing. But first, I guess we can dig into Mai-Chan's Sweet Buns. And I was actually playing this earlier today, and I'm glad I actually got a chance to play this some more, because I got deeper into the mechanics of this game, and it is awesome.
It's great.
So like it is a top down. I don't want to say it's not just match 3, but just for sense of reference, it's like a match 3 puzzle game, and it's on a 4x4 grid, and you essentially have all these pastries. There's quite a variety actually, which I didn't realize before. Like there's pretzels, there's kind of these Hawaiian sweet rolls, there's eclairs, I think they are. I don't know. They're definitely not hot dogs, but at first I was like, these are hot dogs? What's up? No, they're eclairs or something. And then what's the other one? Like a croissant or something?
Oh yeah. You unlock more as you play. And each have their own mechanics, but go on.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's what I didn't realize at first. Like I didn't like get deeper into so when you pick, you also have different power-ups that you pick from. Basically each pastry has a power-up associated with it that you then, whatever 4 pastries that you have selected, those will be the 4 that will appear on the board.
Yes.
But also those will be the power-ups that you have when you're playing the game. So I didn't realize every time you win a round, you get coins, and then those coins you can spend in the shop to unlock new pastries. So I unlocked a donut, I unlocked a few more things, and I didn't even realize that those added in new layers and new mechanics into the game, because it's not, even though it's like a match 3 puzzler, it's not like a timing base. Like you can take as much time as you want to basically match either vertically or horizontally the orders. There'll be 4 cards on the bottom that'll be like either one of those 4 pastries, either ×1, ×2, or ×3, and you have to match those exactly. You can't pick 2 out of a row of 3. You have to match exactly 2, exactly 3, exactly 1, but you might have a power-up that will turn an order for 3 into 3 pretzels into an order for 1 pretzel. Nice. But it'll cost you 2 stars. And the way that you gain stars is by getting a row of 4, whether it's or a row or a column, I guess, but a 4 complete, and there's no diagonals or anything like that. So once you get 4, and then you'll get a star basically, and those are also the stars are like a multiplier for your score at the end of the round, so you'll get more coins as well. So that it's just kind of like an extra layer. It is kind of like once you unlock the stuff, it's kind of, you grind for the coins, you unlock the stuff. There is a hard mode. To the best of my knowledge, it's just you get less of the 1x orders, and there's 24 orders instead of 20. It's kind of like a deck of cards you have to go through. But yeah, I was playing more today, and I don't know how I didn't notice those shop mechanics. I guess I just didn't really mess around with the shop that much. I just won a round of normal and was like, oh, let's try hard mode and get into it, and didn't realize that this game was even deeper than I thought. And being that it's from the developer of High Stakes, Christman, I should have known, but I know you checked this one out too, John, and obviously you realized that there were these extra mechanics and layers that went over my head. But what did you think of this one?
Yeah, no, I liked it because it's a really good, satisfying loop for a puzzle game. You are unlocking new pastries that give you new power-ups, but really it's just a really satisfying, I like the mechanic of the card-based orders that have a kind of sense of randomness to it, but you still have, 4 orders at any given time. And it's really well communicated to you. If there are no moves that you can make on the screen, but you have a power up, your little star meter will shake, and that will clue you in that there's nothing that you can do on the screen. Nice. And yes, if there are no moves that you can make and you don't have any stars, that's when you get a game over. So it's just really
instantaneous.
Quick.
Yeah. It's as soon as I passed it to you, I was like, oh shoot, I forgot to mention about how it lets you know when your turn's over, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just and the presentation is just great.
Oh yeah, huge,
great music, huge sprites.
Nice.
It's just got the pixel art is fantastic.
Love it.
It's just so awesome. I love this game. It's so great. And again, we'll have links as always in our episode description. But make sure there are actually 2 games called Mai-Chan Sweet Buns if you look on itch.io, because this was a game that was actually developed for. There's this other game jam called A Game by Its Cover, and people make these fake Famicom cartridge designs. Ooh. And then people just as design, people just design them and post them on some forums or whatever, and then people take those designs and then turn them into a game. Like just be like, I'm going to take that concept and be like, I'm going to make a game out of that. Like I played a game called Satan Loves Cake a long time ago. That was like this like mini Metroidvania platformer. It's really fun, actually. It's awesome. When I was streaming it, the developer was in the chat saying like, like I felt bad I had the levels all jacked up. So we actually don't have that one uploaded. But now I got to go back and finish that game now that I mentioned it. There's a bunch of secrets and stuff. But yeah, it's such a cool concept for a game jam. Like, just so cool.
That's great.
Yeah, one more PICO-8 game that I wanted to mention real quick and that we both checked out is Alpine Alpaca. And this is maybe my favorite PICO-8 game that I've checked out so far. Watch out for the hyperbole here. But truly, I mean that in like the deepest sense. Like this is like a deck building card game, kind of light style. Like it doesn't get too intense or anything. Rogue light in the sense that it's just like a one run arcade style game, high score chasing, and a little bit of like a grid based. It's not tactics, but there's like a light element of strength. It's like light, all of these elements. And I just, it's just such a perfect game. I don't know. I really love every aspect of this game. It's like, I don't know. You basically just have one of 3 cards that you can pick from that allow you to move on this grid based like downhill skiing slope as you ski down as an alpaca, and you can pick like you're either going to move like 2 tiles straight down or 2 tiles diagonally to the left, and you're always obviously going down. Well, I shouldn't say always, but you're never going upwards, I guess. But you do essentially once you pass through like 3 of the slalom gates, you get to add a new type of card to your deck that will either be like a speed up that will add like a +1 to all your cards, or you'll get like a sidestep. You basically get to pick from one of 3 or 4 different cards to add to your deck. But I just like, again, like the presentation, huge chunky sprites that are just like, it just got like these bopping chip tunes from Gruber Music, which is every game that uses the Gruber chip tunes on PICO-8 are just fantastic. It just adds so much. But it's like, I don't know. I don't know what it is about this game, but I just keep coming back and coming back. I fire it up like almost daily, to be honest. Like, just let me just play a few runs of this game. It's just like, I just love it. I don't know, but what I know you liked it as well, John. But what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, this was one that you like kept recommending and like kept saying that was like, oh, this is a perfect game.
I was harping.
This is and like I've had my reservations in the past on some of those recommendations, but
I strike out a lot, man.
But honestly, like as soon as I started playing this game, like I was like texting you back. It's like, nope, every single thing you said was absolutely warranted. Like even like the Wipeout music, I would just let sit because it just was incredible to listen to. Like
it's so good.
It is, and it really. And I'm not a guy who plays a lot of arcade games or likes playing like those high score chasey games. Like I kind of like a progression or something. But honestly, everything about this game, like I was just continuously being like, what does this card do? Like things that I wouldn't normally do in terms of like, a progression, that path that I want to like, if I want to beat a game, like I wouldn't do something outside of my comfort zone. But, I was like, I want to see what it's like if I choose the card path that lets me jump over obstacles, or the one that just continuously adds speed to me. Like, and like, it is an incredibly satisfying game that is just endlessly replayable. And I also just love it to pieces.
Yeah, there's like just enough power-ups, just enough variety, but like not too much where it's overwhelming, but you can like, I don't know. I keep firing this one up again and again. I just love it so much.
Same.
Awesome.
Yeah. Randall, we got to get you in on the PICO-8 action. Sooner or later, we'll get you there.
Seriously, I've got it installed. I just haven't bothered to launch it. That's my fault.
Yeah. Well, no worries, man. No worries. I'm loving my time with the PICO-8 so much, but I'm pretty sure we can wrap things up there this week, guys, if you guys are feeling good.
Yes, sir.
And as always, you can find us on the internet at pursuingpixels.com. We've also got a nice convenient link tree now at /pursuingpixels. But yeah, we're on Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. YouTube, we got a nice growing Discord community, so come join us, come hang, throw some game recommendations our way.
Please.
And otherwise, I might have forgot something, but if not, we'll call it there, and we'll catch you next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Man, have you I don't think it's not the Twitter account that's run by Fanbyte, but Fanbyte has been reposting a lot of I think it's like Goodwill finds or
I need to follow that.
Oh no. I mean, like, it is, I think, unusable for most people because like the I think the technical term is a gaylord, which is just a giant like package like of a like non-organized just like, and like there's like on shopgoodwill.com there is a 400-pound gaylord of Xbox original games.
Oh my god.
And it's just like an entire palette of assorted games. It's like, it's not a thing that you can buy. Like, it's like thing that you would buy by weight.
Yeah. So
By
how many
weight?
copies of old NFL games do you want on
Yes,
the
and like how many
original
copies of Madden 2006 are you going to get in that?
Those budget bins at those retro stores are always so disappointing.
Oh, yes.
Like even the finds you might find in there are like, not so much.
I feel like I occasionally got DS games out of budget bins like that back in the day anyway.
Actually, at Toys R Us.
Yeah, man.
Like
Toys R Us
Boy-
was
I would
dope
get
for that.
DVDs.
Game Boy Advance and DS.
Yeah.
Because I got WarioWare Twisted, I think, for like
man.
$5 or $15. It was like 10 or 15 bucks.
Steal.
Like mint condition. Yeah. What were you going to say, John?
No, just like I would always get like DVDs from like those bins. Like I would never get games because like I don't know, by the time that I would get to those like bargain bins, it would all be like licensed games of like some Nickelodeon show or something. Like there wouldn't be any actual games in there.
Those GBA video clips that they sold for $20 that were like Nickelodeon cartoons.
Yeah. I forgot about those.
There's a lot of those in those bins.